Hi, Can here, and I'm here today with the Gansai Tambi Granulating colors by Kuretake, and I have not tried these out yet, but I'm very curious. And they have 5 colors, red, pink, orange, blue, violet. And they come in this little palette here with one empty one. I think that's for mixing them. It says the colors of these Gansai watercolors separate to create whimsical and dreamy effects. The degree of color separation and blurring vary depending on the type of paper used. You can enjoy greater changes in color by dissolving the watercolors in lots of water and letting the colors separate on your palette before painting. So I am going to try it on a variety of papers. To start with, I'm going to swatch onto this watercolor paper, but then I'm going to try it in some of my different sketchbooks that have different papers as well. And it said to use lots of water, so I'm going to go ahead and mix. I have these little cups prepared with the names of the colors on them, so I keep them straight. So per instructions, I'm using these little cups to mix them with quite a bit of water to have them pretty diluted as I swatch these out. And so as I swatch them, I'm adding more water as I go so that it is even more diluted as I move down the swatch. So I'm doing that for each of the colors and just watching how they granulate and the colors separate out. I can already tell that these are going to be very lovely and very interesting effects on these, which I love watercolors that granulate. I love the textures. I love the I guess special effects aspect of watercolors. So I do find these very intriguing and exciting. So I have here the red, pink, orange, blue, and now the violet. And they all have like a secondary color you see coming out. So as I said, this was on the normal watercolor paper, but I have some other papers I want to try too. This paper is marketed as being for alcohol inks. It's a very kind of plasticky coated feeling paper. It's very similar to Yupo paper. It's a different brand, but I think essentially the same thing. And so as you see, it's, you know, the watercolor pools and doesn't necessarily stick to this very well, but it was interesting how vibrant that looked. So now I'm pulling out my little Art Creations sketchbook. That's my kind of carry-along little sketchbook. And so I'm going to be trying the paper on it. I'm also finding that I prefer to work just directly from the palette and just make sure I have a really wet brush and really add some water in on the palette rather than mixing them in the little cups. So that's just my personal preference, I guess. Now I'm pulling out this sketchbook that has Tomoe River paper in it and am swatching in that, starting backwards with the violet first and so on. And this paper is really thin, so it kind of buckles when you use watercolor on it, which I actually really love because it, as the paper crinkles, it makes these little pooled areas where the watercolor is more intense, and it makes it dry in really interesting looking ways. And look how vibrant these colors are on this paper. So again, I'm finding that I like the less absorbent, smoother paper on these. So this one that I'm using now is the Noble Life notebook, and it is just an inexpensive notebook. The paper is pretty non-absorbent, so the watercolor just kind of sits on top. And again, I think that kind of paper is what really showcases what these watercolors can do. So I actually kind of prefer it on non-watercolor paper, just to get those pooling and the granulation to be really evident. So just kind of playing around here with some color and how it behaves on this paper as I swatch this, and layering more paint on top, just seeing what it does, kind of pushing it a little bit to see how it behaves. This paper also crinkles a bit, just like the Tomoe River paper did, and makes those little bit of pools and puddles of watercolor. Now I'm ready to move on to the next paper, which is the Beta series by Stillman and Birn. It's kind of a very heavyweight paper that is suitable for wet media. It's a little bit different than most watercolor paper, though. It's not smooth. It has some texture, but not as much as most watercolor paper does. But it is also very absorbent. So we get a totally different look, I feel like, with this paper than we did with some of those other than the Tomoe River paper and the Life Noble notebook paper. So we see more absorbency in play here, and the granulation is just a little bit different because of that, but as you can see, still quite beautiful. I've tried at first just painting the paint directly onto the page, just with a lot of water mixed in, and then on the facing page I'm making a wet circle on the page and then kind of dropping the paint into it, and you get kind of different effects, a different kind of bleeding granulation happening. As I'm painting, I'm thinking these kind of are making me think of planets. I didn't really have that in mind when I chose the circles, but I think these could easily be turned into some cool looking planets. This next paper is in my Strathmore Mixed Media sketchbook, which is paper I really love. And I just was showing you there how those paint colors had separated out. Now, rather than swatching, I'm going to play around with just how these blend together and how I might use these in a real-life piece of art example. And so I'm just kind of checking how they spread over a larger surface, how they blend together. I'm putting the colors side by side so that they can bleed and blend with the water. And just checking to see what textures I can achieve. So I'm really trying to layer on the color on this to see, if how those layers build up and react. And I do think it was very pretty results. Going back and taking a look at some of the things I've done so far, those they aren't entirely dry yet, but the swatches that I've done on the different surfaces, just kind of seeing how those compare. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of difference according to what surface I'm using. So now I'm doing a similar page where I'm just kind of spreading out the paint over the page, but now this time in that Life Noble notebook paper, which is fairly non-absorbent. I've spritzed it with water to start with because you do get that full granulating effect when it's very wet. So I wanted to make sure it was wet. You can see that the paper is buckled with that water on there. But again, that just, I feel like, makes it kind of dry in interesting ways. And you can really see some vivid granulation on this page. Now that these cups have had a little bit more time to dry, you can see that separation perhaps more clearly, which is kind of interesting. I don't really think that the cups are necessarily my ideal way of using them. I am probably much more likely to come back and use the palette. Now I'm using some mixed media paper, and I'm just going to try doing some simple little illustrations using these. Again, I want to kind of see how they behave in some real life examples other than just the swatches. So I put down some water and some plant shapes, and I'm just kind of adding in the color to that and letting it spread within the lines of water. I'm pretty happy with this, and I can see some really good applications in painting some watercolors with this. This might be something where I would go back in and paint the negative spaces around this. I don't know. I feel like there's lots of illustrative potential for this watercolor. I've used all 5 different colors on this piece, so you can see how some of them, there's not a huge amount of variation here. You do see some color variations, and as those colors separate out, you see even more colors. So That initial layer of leaves was done with the orange, but now I'm adding in some of the reds and blues and violets here in these background foliage. And here's the finished results. While it's still wet, we'll come back and revisit it once it's had a chance to dry. Okay, I've let the swatches dry. I've done some other playing around in various surfaces. So let's just take a look at what you can expect from these. As I showed you, the colors in the little pots that I put them in have separated and look really interesting. The pans themselves are a little hard to distinguish color, so I have to go by, what the label is. So I tried to keep things in order as I was swatching. So let's just take a look here at what I've got. Alright, so here's the just plain watercolor paper that I swatched on, and I swatched these fairly diluted. So you can see, I don't know if you can tell how those granulate on there. I also tried it, this is not Yupo paper, but something very similar. It's meant for like alcohol inks. It's a very plasticky, non-absorbent surface. And I think these are really interesting too, how they acted on there. So in general, I found that I kind of liked them on the less absorbent paper. But let's take a look. This is the Art Creations paper. Here they are swatched on there. I think they look pretty nice. Here I did a washi thing with them, and then went back in and added doodles on top. I think that's fun. Here they are in, this is a Tomoe River paper sketchbook, which I really like. Let's find our way back there. So here's a swatch page with, I'll turn it this way, with the red, pink, orange, blue, and violet. As you can see, it kind of depends how these go down. Like on these swatches, these three all look very similar. I think the orange is one of my favorites. It separates out into this orange and teal, which I think is really pretty. And then I tried it just putting down color, and then I added in some orange and teal paint, like regular watercolor paint, in with it to see how that blends, and it does great. Here it is with a little bit of sumi ink added in, so I'm starting to do some experimenting with these here. I think it's really interesting how you get these if you stroke more times, and you get these kind of white ghosty areas, which could be used to advantage. So I think that's all in there. So I did some little fashion sketches using these. Again, these three colors look very similar. I get more difference in this orange one. This is the Stillman and Birn Beta series sketchbook. Pretty nice paper. And where I'm at here. And in this, I tried doing them in these circle swatches. So I have the red, the red, the pink, the orange, the blue, and the violet. So here I did them in kind of a circle, and here I just put down water first and then let it spread into the water. So we see a little bit different in how they behave. Again, very pretty, but not as much color variation in these four as I would like. I would like more variety to show up, but as far as liking how they behave, they're very fun. Then I tried, like if you're doing the illustration, so this is the orange and this was the red. Now if you put it on heavier, I feel like you get a little bit more color variation, but you lose some of the granulating effect. But still very pretty, fun to use. This is in a Strathmore mixed media, and I just did one of these kind of overall washes in this, and it does granulate very pretty. Kind of fine granulation. I really like the edges that it gets of, you know, the different colored edges, and this is one that I'll probably go back and doodle into. This is mixed media paper, and I tried these doodles again, or these foliage, kind of a similar thing that I did on the other page. I do like how it granulated on this quite well, if you can see it. I think this turned out pretty nice. And then probably my favorite one was this Life Noble notebook, plain sheets, pretty inexpensive. It has kind of lightweight, crinkly paper. So here's the colors: the red, the pink, the orange, the blue, and the violet. And then I was just playing with them here. Interesting granulation you get on these. You can definitely see brush strokes if you stroke over it. Then I tried one of these overall pages, and see if I can really looks pretty the way it gets all these edges. I really like that, and this is probably a page I will doodle into as well. And I have a lot to work with here. And then I just tried like an overall doodle with a single. This was with the red. Do see some nice separation of colors. So I think overall I'm pretty happy with them. I think there's some definite possibilities for using these in my artwork. I will often start with a layer of watercolor and then work other media over that, and so I think this could be like one of these type look, be a very nice starting place to work other media on top of. I also, this is I think just very fun, and it's just making some pattern designs. Even printing this as, you know, a collage paper or whatever. I think this is very appealing. I don't know if it shows up on camera, but I love all the little details that you can get in this. And that's my review. I do recommend them. They're very fun to play with. Hopefully they will come out with a more variety of colors. Because I don't feel like there's a lot of variety in this, but I don't mind even if they're all the same. I don't mind having them. I've already made a dent in them. They're around $25. I'll try to put a link to them, but I think worth the money, fun to use. So Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.